Tuna fish, especially that found in canned forms, has long been a staple of bodybuilding diets. Indeed, my lunch for over 20 years consisted of a can of tuna, 6.5 ounce can of tuna, and a half pound of low-fat cottage cheese. If I was trying to gain weight, such as what we used to call bulking up, I would down that tuna fish and cottage cheese with about a half a quart of raw milk, and it was whole milk. Sometimes I would drink instead of the raw milk, I would drink a drink called kefir, Kefir, kind of a form of liquid yogurt. It was an early form of prebiotics. I remember I used to like one that was in a peach flavor. It was loaded with calories, but it was great for gaining weight. I would sometimes substitute that for the milk. I remember bringing a can of tuna and a little carton of cottage cheese and a bottle of milk down to the beach. And, while I was lying in the sand, well, of course I had a blanket. I'd lie on, get my suntan, and I'd eat my lunch at the same time. I'd just eat there right in the sun. I used to do this all the time. This was my bodybuilding competition days, and it worked very well. When you think about it, that lunch, I mean, let's see, the can of tuna had about, if I remember correctly, about 50 grams of protein, and then the half-pound of cottage cheese had about another 30, 40, so I had about 90 grams right there. Then I had the milk. This brought it up to maybe close to 140 grams of protein in one meal. That was a lot more than I probably needed to eat in one meal. We didn't know about protein limits back in those days. They're supposed to get only 25 to maybe 50 grams at most of protein per meal. We would just eat and didn't really count the grams. We just wanted to make sure we were getting quality protein because, you didn't have the great protein supplements back then. There was no whey proteins. I won't go into the various kinds of proteins. I've done that in other videos and in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. But suffice to say, it was quite easy to get protein from foods back then. Tuna is favored by bodybuilders and other athletes involved in fitness because it's low in saturated fat and it contains omega-3 fatty acids as well as high-quality protein. Some studies suggest that eating fish is more beneficial than ingesting fish oil supplements. Now, the reason for this is that there are other nutrients found in fish. Fish oil supplements contain only concentrated forms of the two omega-3 fatty acids, EPA and DHA. However, when you eat whole fish sources, you're getting a number of other nutrients that are very beneficial for health, including affecting cardiovascular health. I'm going to have an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter about these other nutritional factors that are often overlooked that are found in whole fish. One of them is the amino acid taurine. There's several others, but I'll go into detail of how these things work. On the negative side, eating fish provides a substance called TMAO, trimethyl oxide, which basically is also associated with heart disease. I mean, it sounds paradoxical. I mean, they say fish helps prevent cardiovascular disease, and yet it contains extremely high amounts of this stuff called TMAO, which is linked to the onset of cardiovascular disease and diabetes and blood vessel abnormalities. And yet, when you think about it, the protective nutrients in fish, such as taurine and omega-3, are so potent that nobody seems to ever get heart disease from eating fish, regardless of the TMAO content. And I don't have any evidence to prove this, but my gut feeling is that these protective nutrients in fish, and also contains selenium, by the way, which I'll get to in a minute. You'll see the significance of that. I think these protective nutrients in fish actually protect against any negative health effects of the TMO. How else to explain the fact that fish is always considered highly protective against cardiovascular disease? In fact, the American Heart Association suggests consuming at least 2 3.5-ounce servings of fish a week, but not fried fish. When you fry fish, unfortunately turn a healthy food into a bad food. So fried fish doesn't count. Other guidelines suggest that consuming enough fish to provide 250 milligrams of omega-3 fatty acids provides preventive effects against cardiovascular disease onset. Again, the most popular type of fish is tuna, although it's not the best source of omega-3. Salmon, sardines, herring, all of these other fish contain far greater amounts of omega-3. In fact, the fattier the fish, the more omega-3 it contains. And tuna tends to be on the kind of a low-fat fish. And low-fat fish, such as tuna, tilapia, and others, they don't contain much omega-3 at all. They're not good sources of omega-3. But the main problem with fish from a health perspective is the presence of toxins, mainly mercury and surprisingly arsenic. Most people are familiar with arsenic. They know it as a deadly poison, but it's found in a lot of natural foods. And of course, it's in much smaller amounts. Eating these foods is not going to kill you, but it will cause a number of serious health effects from the arsenic, including possible promotion of cancer and other diseases. Albacore tuna tends to have lower levels of mercury compared to other fish, but it still has more than salmon, and salmon, again, is a superior source of omega-3 to tuna. The FDA recently recommended eating no more than 6 ounces of albacore tuna a week because of possible mercury contamination. Tuna can also contain arsenic, including 10% of the most 10% arsenic content of the most toxic form of arsenic, which is called inorganic arsenic. I'll be having an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter very soon about arsenic, stuff that you probably never read anywhere else. It's not commonly known. I'm going to talk about some of the popular bodybuilding foods, such as chicken, tuna, rice. They all contain arsenic. But more importantly, I'm going to discuss ways around this, how you can eat these very good protein foods without kind of slowly poisoning yourself or giving yourself cardiovascular disease or cancer promotion. This is going to be in my Applied Metabolics newsletter. Once again, information that you won't find anywhere else. Recently, the website consumerlabs.com. Now, consumerlabs.com is an independent company that charges subscriptions, and what they do is they analyze many over-the-counter supplements, and sometimes they analyze foods. They recently analyzed a couple commercial tuna and salmon, and what they found was that those containing the richest content of omega-3 fatty acids were a brand called Vital Choice Albacore and Wild Planet. Those are the two brands. Unfortunately, those same brands also contain the highest levels of mercury and arsenic. Kind of dampens the enthusiasm there. But Bumblebee solid white albacore tuna contain the highest levels of mercury and arsenic. Canned salmons contain the lowest levels of these toxins. You should also know that ingesting the trace mineral selenium promotes the rapid excretion of mercury and prevents any negative health effects. How does it do this? Well, what happens is selenium actually, when you consume mercury, selenium actually locks on to the ingested mercury, almost like a chelation effect, and literally pulls it out of the body. So before the mercury can do any harm or before it can accumulate in tissues. So if you eat stuff like tuna and these other foods that contain mercury, especially other kinds of fish, you'd be well advised to also make sure that you get enough selenium. You want to get up to 200 micrograms a day of selenium. You don't want to go crazy on the selenium because too much can actually interfere with thyroid hormone production. In fact, there's a disease where the thyroid, you produce too much thyroid hormone, hyperthyroidism, and some medical journals are suggesting that people who are suffering from this, if they take larger amounts of selenium, it will actually cure it because it cuts down the thyroid production naturally without any side effects. Selenium also helps prevent cardiovascular disease and cancer, and it's also very good for protecting the testes, which is, of course, the site of testosterone production. Dietary fiber is another way to control mercury. Again, dietary fiber will lock onto any ingested mercury, pull it out of the body before it can be stored and cause long-term damage. As for arsenic, as I said, there are ways of dealing with that too, and I'll get into that. It would be too lengthy to discuss that in this video, but I will have, again, an article in my Applied Metabolics newsletter that will tell you everything you need to know about arsenic, how it affects hormones, how it affects body fat, and how to deal with it nutritionally in a very safe and easy way. So that's about it. So, I mean, just you can eat these foods. Tuna, it's still okay. As for myself, Full disclosure, I haven't had canned tuna in years, not because of any concerns about mercury or arsenic, simply because after eating it for 20 consecutive years, I just burned out on it. I just can't stand even being around tuna. When people are eating tuna, I almost have to leave the room. It's the same effect I have when somebody's smoking cigarettes. I can't be in their presence because I don't want to breathe in secondhand cigarette fumes, which can actually cause almost as much disease as smoking cigarettes. It's a little factoid for you. So somebody smoking a cigarette around me, I leave the area very quickly. And if anyone asks me, does my smoking bother me? Yes, it does. If you want to kill yourself, do it on your own time. I don't want to be around it. So I don't eat tuna. And again, it's not because of the mercury or the heavy metals that it might contain. Rather, I just lost my appetite for it. But fish generally, don't misunderstand what I said in this video. Fish is one of the healthiest foods you can eat. You'll understand why when you read my article about the other nutritional factors that are found in fish and how they help prevent heart disease and other illnesses. I'm going to go into detail about that. So you still want to eat fish. You just have to take certain precautions. You don't want to go crazy on eating tuna. I do believe that despite, even if you have the selenium and the fiber, you shouldn't eat a lot of tuna, just in case, just for safety reasons. This is especially true for pregnant women and young children. And then the mercury is a little bit more dangerous. So that's about it. If you want further information on nutrition, exercise science, supplements, anti-aging research, fat loss techniques that work, ergogenic aids women's health, subscribe today to my Applied Metabolics newsletter. It's www.appliedmetabolics.com. 40 to 50 pages every month, more like a monthly ebook rather than a newsletter. I shouldn't have called it a newsletter because most newsletters are about a page or two of just useless garbage. My newsletter is more like an encyclopedia in the extent of in-depth information it provides, which exceeds anything you will find on any website or any blog, or even any other digital nutrition publication, because while these other publications, some of them cover nutrition fairly well, and others cover exercise fairly well, none of them covers the range of topics that I do every month. I cover them all, hormonal therapy, you name it. They never touch these subjects. And then none of the people that write for these newsletters can match my 57 years of actual experience in the gym and learning, and 42 years as a professional writer, unmatchable by any of these people. They don't even come close. I don't care how many PhDs they have after their name. They will not match my material, period. Case closed. So subscribe today, www.appliedmetabolics.com. If you subscribe, I'll send you an invitation to join my private Applied Metabolics newsletter, where I post new information every day on nutrition, exercise, science, general health, and preventive medicine. I also answer questions on the Applied Metabolics Facebook page. I have an email portal on my Applied Metabolics webpage where I will answer short questions submitted to me by current subscribers to Applied Metabolics, not from unsolicited. I don't answer unsolicited questions because I only have a limited amount of time, and I prefer to give that to people that are subscribers who support my work. And that's about it. If you want to have the best friend you ever have, go to your local shelter, adopt a dog. Best friends you'll ever have. And, if you give your dog tuna, maybe you should give the dog a little bit of selenium too, just in case. Take care.